Hi everyone, welcome back to DGMZ, Diwan-e-Ghalib, Meri Zubani. To all our returning viewers, we are very happy you could join us again. And to the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, if you were with me in the previous episode, you know that currently we are going through Ghazal 35 from Diwan-e-Ghalib. वो मेरी चीन-ए-जबी से गम-ए-पिन्हां समझा. We have already covered 2 couplets. Today we are going to get into the 3rd couplet. As always, I'm going to read the couplet first and then we will get into a quick approximate translation, keywords, key concepts, and finally the DGMZ impression of the couplet. So, allow me to read to you couplet 3 from Ghazal 35 from Diwan-e-Ghalib. Sharh-e-Asbaab-e-Giriftaari-e-Khaatir mat pooch. Sharh-e-Asbaab-e-Giriftaari-e-Khaatir mat pooch. इस कदर तंग हुआ दिल कि मैं जिंदा समझा. So, let's start with a quick approximate translation. First line. Sharh-e-Asbaab-e-Giriftaari-e-Khaatir mat pooch. Don't ask me to explain or interpret the multitude of causes and reasons pertaining to my captivity and imprisonment. Second line. इस कदर तंग हुआ दिल कि मैं जिंदा समझा. Such was the intensity of my heart's narrowing constriction and oppression that I started believing my heart to be a prison cell. So that is the approximate translation. Let's start picking our keywords. We have quite a few. So let's start with Sharh. Sharh or Sharh is a word used to describe some sort of explanation, some sort of interpretation of a concept or a theme. Sometimes it is also used to describe a very long, extensive commentary about again a theme or a topic. इस पे मजरू सुल्तानपुरी का ये शेर. शरह गम तो मुख्तसर होती गई उसके हुजूर, लफ्ज़ जो मुंह से ना निकला दास्तां बनता गया. Beautiful couplet. The approximate translation is the explanation, the commentary of grief kept getting shorter and more abbreviated in her presence. And hence, all the words that never escaped my mouth kept transforming into stories, into long tales. Beautiful couplet. So, that takes care of Sharh. Moving on to Asbab. Now, Asbab means any kind of cause, reason, motivation behind something. Sometimes also used to describe tools, methods, means to attain something. असबाब पे असद बदायूं का ये शेर. मेरी रुसवाई के असबाब हैं मेरे अंदर, आदमी हूँ सो बहुत ख्वाब हैं मेरे अंदर. So the approximate translation is the reasons, right? Asbab, the reasons, the causes of my disappointment lie within me. After all, I am a human being. There are a million of dreams that lie within me, inside of me. So that takes care of Asbab. Moving on to Giriftari. Giriftari translates to being imprisoned, being captive, being arrested. इस पर सबा अकबराबादी का ये शेर. बावजूदे की मोहब्बत कोई जंजीर नहीं, फिर भी दिल को मेरे एहसास गिरफ्तारी है. The approximate translation is, despite the fact that love is no chain or shackle, Still, my heart has this feeling of captivity, of imprisonment. Moving on to the next word, Khaatir. Now, Khaatir it can technically mean, the most common usage is some kind of hospitality, right? Some kind of gracious welcoming of a guest, making them feel comfortable. But otherwise, above and beyond that, Khaatir can also be connected to heart, soul, mind. इस पे मोहसिन नकवी का ये शेर, अपने शहर के सब लोगों से मेरे खातिर क्यों उलझे हो. So the approximate translation is, with each and every person of your town, why for my sake are you getting into a conflict with? Why? Alright, moving on to our next word, Tang. Now, Tang is an interesting word. It is used a lot in Urdu poetry. What it means is something very narrow, something very constricted, something very tight. Now that is the physical meaning, and metaphorically Tang can be being very oppressed, being very grief-stricken, being very distressed. इस पे दाग दहलवी का ये शेर, जिस से तंग हो ए दाग तो जीते क्यों हो, जान प्यारी भी नहीं, जान से जाते भी नहीं. A very famous couplet, right? So the approximate translation is, if you are so exasperated, if you are so tired of life, daag, and the poet is referring to himself, then why do you live on? It seems you don't love life, but then you don't give up on life either. What kind of dilemma are you living? Daag. And then our last word of the day, Zindaan. Zindaan is any kind of prison cell, any kind of cage, any kind of jail, right? इस पे again मजरू सुल्तानपुरी का शेर, रोक सकता हमें जिंदाए बला क्या मजरू, हम तो आवाज़ हैं दीवार से छन जाते हैं. So the approximate translation is, how will it ever stop us, Majru? And the poet is referring to himself. These prisons of calamity. After all, we are voice, we are sound. We just sift through, we just permeate through the walls of the prison and escape them. So, the prisons of calamity, how will they ever keep us imprisoned? Alright, so that takes care of all the keywords. Let's start getting into our impression. First line, Sharh-e-Asbaab-e-Giriftaari-e-Khaatir mat Puuchh. Don't ask me to explain and interpret the multitude of causes and reasons pertaining to my captivity and imprisonment. Now this first line is dominated by a very long word complex created by Ghalib. This is a single word complex, Sharh-e-Asbaab-e-Giriftaari-e-Khaatir. So let's start breaking it down. Sharh or Sharah in Persian and Arabic, particularly in literary and academic context, is exposition, explanation, interpretation, description. It can also be used in a financial context where it would mean some kind of rate of assessment or some kind of specific price, जैसे शराए-सूद, interest rate, right? Now, some other examples of phrases just to understand the essence of the word, right? Sharah Navis, which is a commentator or an annotator. Sharah Sadr, clarification or realization of truth. So, Sharah therefore is a detailed explanation, a detailed interpretation of something. Moving on to the next word of that complex, Asbab. Again, like we said, Asbab is reasons, causes, means or tools to gain something. Asbab is actually plural of the word sabab, right, which again is cause. Now, in a formal philosophical context, asbab can refer to reasons behind an event or tools that are used to achieve a goal. जैसे asbab-e-safar, the necessities or requisites for travel. Asbab-e-ranj, the causes of suffering. Alam-e-asbab, the world of cause and effect. So, asbab has multitude of usages. It can be reasons, causes, tools, means, methods to achieve something. So when we connect shara and asbab in today's word complex, it becomes an explanation of the reasons and interpretation of the causes. Moving on to the next two words of this complex, Giriftaari-e-Khaatir. Giriftari is, like we said in keywords, captivity, imprisonment, and Khaatir in this word complex means pertaining to. So, Giriftari-e-Khaatir becomes pertaining to captivity. So now let's look at that long word complex one more time. Sharh-e-Asbaab-e-Giriftaari-e-Khaatir. It will mean an explanation or interpretation of causes and reasons pertaining to captivity and imprisonment. Finally, Ghalib ends the first line with mat puuchh, which is don't ask or don't even ask. This is an interesting phrase, another favorite of Ghalib. Not only Ghalib, but lot of other Urdu poets and shairs use mat puuchh. Now, what is very interesting about this word phrase is that though it literally translates to don't ask or don't even ask, the extended meaning of this word phrase is don't ask, don't even ask, because it's indescribable. So whenever poets use mat puuchh, this is what they usually mean. Don't ask, don't even ask, because it's indescribable. Now, a thing could be indescribable because either it is too good or because it is too bad. But either way, it is too much to be put in words successfully and comprehensively. Words will not be able to do justice to its intensity and complexity. नुज़रत अब्बासी का ये शेर, दर्द व गम की हिकायतें मत पूछ, दिल पे गुजरी कयामतें मत पूछ. The approximate translation is, do not ask me the narratives, the stories of pain and sorrow. Do not ask me the calamities that fell over this heart of mine. Don't ask. Don't even ask, because they are indescribable. In our couplet today, the first line seems to be both a request and an order by Ghalib, where he urges not to be questioned, not to be requested for details and explanations of the reasons and causes leading to his captivity and imprisonment of emotions, feelings. If we are to keep in mind Ghalib's caliber as a poet, a caliber that allowed him to deep dive into the darkest, most complex emotions that lie in the depths of human psyche and heart, the first line is not an easy statement to make by Ghalib. Don't ask me to explain. Don't ask me to interpret. Don't ask me to detail. After all, a poet like Ghalib would take pride in his ability to transform the most complex and the most indescribable emotions and feelings into beautiful, masterful poetry. But here in this couplet he says, don't ask me to describe it. Don't ask me to explain it. Don't ask me to interpret it. It seems Ghalib in this first line puts a spotlight on the immense difficulty one feels in vocalizing the captivity of emotions and feelings inside oneself. Ghalib here describes the helplessness of someone who's trapped and imprisoned emotionally. A helplessness that expresses itself as silence. No words. A silence Ghalib captures well in Mat Puuchh. Don't even ask. So, the first line, Sharh-e-Asbaab-e-Giriftaari-e-Khaatir Mat Puuchh, is a request, is an order from Ghalib, urging people not to ask him to explain, describe, and interpret the myriad of reasons and causes that are leading to the imprisonment and captivity of his emotions and feelings. Let's move to the second line now. Is qadar tang hua dil ki main zinda samjha. Such was the intensity of my heart's narrowing constriction and oppression that I started believing that my heart is a prison cell. After the matter-of-fact statement in the first line, where Ghalib urges everyone to not ask him to describe or explain the reasons of captivity and imprisonment of his feelings and emotions, in the second line, he gives us a brief yet very insightful peek into the very same thing. Ghalib describes this captivity, this imprisonment of emotions and feelings as something where he feels his heart is narrowing down, his heart is constricting as a prison cell. Tang, is qadar tang hua dil. Such was the intensity of my heart's constriction and oppression. This tangiye dil, or constriction of the heart, is a theme that is a favorite of Ghalib. As you know, at DGMZ, we have not even covered 25% of Ghalib's Diwan, or collection of poems. And even in that small amount that we have covered, we have come across this theme already 2 times in 2 different couplets. So obviously, this is a very favorite theme of Ghalib, this constriction of the heart, this narrowing of the heart. Tangiye dil is a response to an intense emotion which makes the heart constrict and almost squeeze life out of its own self. A feeling that is intense but not easy to describe. Ghalib, however, has described this feeling in multiple ways, using different symbolisms to help us as readers get literal insight into the feeling of tangiye dil, or constriction of heart. This couplet from Ghalib. तंग ये दिल का गिला क्या, ये वो काफिर दिल है कि अगर तंग ना होता तो परेशान होता. This is one of his famous couplets. The approximate translation is, what complaint should I make against the narrowness, the constriction of my heart? After all, this is a faithless heart. And I know, had it not been constricting and narrowing in grief, then it would be expanding and agitating in grief. This heart will remain restless. That restlessness can make it narrow down and constrict. That restlessness can make it agitated and expand. But either way, it will not be at peace. So I don't go around complaining about its constriction, because I know even if it was to expand, that again would be out of restlessness. And then this other couplet from Ghalib, Zakhm ne daad na di, Tang ye dil ki ya Rab, तीर भी सीना बिस्मिल से पर अफशा निकला. Lovely couplet, very complex. The approximate translation is that, O Lord, the wound that was put on my heart, that wound did not compliment my heart for its narrowness, for its constriction. Because that arrow that pierced my heart, making that wound, when it came out of my heart, the tail end of the arrow was all feathered out. It had detached from the arrow, you know, those little feathers that are on the tail end of the arrow. Such was the tightness of the heart that the arrow came out agitated, flustered from the heart. The arrow had never passed through such a narrow space ever before. And we know arrows can pass through very narrow spaces. But just Ghalib's way, right, of describing the constriction of the lover's heart, the squeezing of the lover's heart. Now, tea. So, in these two examples, we see Ghalib explaining the narrowness of the heart with the symbolism of the arrow passing through it, with the symbolism of it getting either constricted or getting agitated. In today's couplet, he uses another symbolism. And this time, he uses a prison cell. Ghalib compares the constriction of the heart, the squeezing of the heart, the narrowness of the heart to a prison cell. Ghalib in the second line describes that his heart feels like a prison cell. A prison cell whose walls keep closing in on Ghalib, stifling him, crushing him, squeezing the life out of him. Ghalib paints a poignant picture of himself being trapped in the prison cell of his own heart. Also to be noted is the fact that Tang has both physical and metaphorical meanings. Physically, Tang is something very narrow, something very constricted, and metaphorically, Tang is something that is oppressed, that is distressed, grieved, pained. And when you read the line, keeping both that physical and metaphorical meaning, then you see that the impact of the word Tang gets compounded in the second line. So the heart is not only physically narrow and constricted, but it is metaphorically oppressed, distressed, grieved, pained. So that takes care of the second line, Is qadar tang hua dil ki main zinda samjhaa. Such was the intensity of my heart's narrowing constriction and oppression that I started believing my heart to be a prison cell. Now, as always, let's take a few minutes to step back and look at the couplet in totality. This couplet packs in itself two of Ghalib's favorite themes. Number one, Tang-e-Dil, the narrowness and constriction of heart. Number two, Mat Puuchh, don't even ask me to describe it because it's indescribable. Ghalib in today's couplet says, don't ask me to describe and explain the various reasons that led to the imprisonment, to the captivity of my emotions and feelings. Suffice to say, this is all I will say. Such was the narrowness, Such was the constriction, such was the oppression my heart felt, that I have started believing that my heart is a prison cell inside of me. In addition, there is interesting wordplay here between the word Sharh in first line and Tang and Zindaan in second line. So we've already covered that Sharh means explanation, interpretation of something. But in addition, Sharh also means opening of something, expanding of something. And from this perspective, Sharh makes a very beautiful contrast to the narrowness, the constriction of the word Tang and Zindaan in the second line. And hence, the couplet can also be summarized as Ghalib saying, "Don't ask me to open up when my heart is closing down on me. Don't ask me to speak up when my heart is silencing me down." We just love the way, it's a very simple couplet. There is not a lot of riddles and mysteries in it, which is very typical of Ghalib. But still, the way Ghalib takes the time, takes the effort to somehow put a plausible, physical, literal symbolism in front of us to help us understand a very suppressed, silent emotion is amazing. Why would you spend so much time to give voice to silence? And even if you were to spend so much time and effort, do you have the ability to justifiably give voice to silence? Right? So this is Ghalib's way of saying, don't keep asking me to speak up. Don't keep asking me to give it a voice. Don't keep asking me to put it in words. It is indescribable. The captivity, the imprisonment my heart and the feelings in it and the emotions in it feel. All right, I cannot give you a long explanation, but I will tell you this much. Such is the narrowness, such is the constriction, such is the oppression that I feel that my heart has transformed into a prison cell that is holding my emotions and feelings captive. And this is where one has to realize, right, the power Ghalib describes of what lies within us. Sometimes, though physically on the outside we are very restrained, we are very captive, we are sometimes literally in a prison, but if inside our heart there is a feeling of freedom, there is a feeling of liberation, we will ultimately feel liberated and free. On the other hand, sometimes we are on the outside physically absolutely free. We are on our own, there is no stopping us. But for some reason inside our heart lies a feeling that imprisons us, holds us back. And then it doesn't matter how free you are on the outside. That feeling inside your heart creates a prison inside your heart and keeps you captive, keeps you imprisoned, keeps you chained. And that is the exact feeling that Ghalib is describing in today's couplet. Now, why is Ghalib feeling so imprisoned, so chained? Well, he doesn't get into it, right? But one can make a guess, right? Either it will be unrequited love, which is a very common theme in Urdu poetry, or it is unrequited everything other than love, right? Career, worldly things, etc. Some kind of disappointment, some kind of failure, some kind of unattainment of a wish, of a desire that makes the lover feel so helpless, so hopeless, so silenced right, is the feeling that we are seeing in this couplet. All right, so that takes care of Sharh-e-Asbaab-e-Giriftaari-e-Khaatir mat Puuchh, is qadar tang hua dil ki main zinda samjha. Don't ask me to explain and interpret the multitude of causes and reasons pertaining to my captivity and imprisonment. Suffice to say, such was the intensity of my heart's narrowing constriction and oppression that I started believing my heart was a prison cell. All right, that brings us to the end of this episode. As always, we will be very keen to hear your comments and feedback. Now, for all the new viewers, a strong recommendation to access the episode Introduction to DGMC, because it will give you a good insight into the motivation and inspiration behind this podcast. For our regular viewers, whenever you have time, please visit the homepage of the channel. We have various playlists segregated by topics, segregated by ghazals. Surf through them, pick an episode that interests you. If you have not joined us on the Facebook page yet, we encourage you to join us there. We almost every day post the share of the day or the couplet of the day from various artists, including Ghalib, various shayars, poets, and there is always an English translation accompanying them in the comments section. So that is an interesting thing which we have a feeling you will enjoy accessing. Now, on the screen, currently you will see this step-by-step instruction for any viewer who wants to access this episode in a language other than English. As you know, all DGMZ episodes are originally created in English, but if you want to access them in Hindi, Urdu, or any other language made available by YouTube, this is the step-by-step instruction on how you can activate that function. And what will happen after that is YouTube is going to translate the entire episode in the language you have chosen and give it to you as subtitles. In our humble opinion, this is a great feature for any viewer who wants to access the episode in a language other than English. All right, now allow me to go ahead and close this episode by sending a lot of love and light to all you dear viewers, and thanks for watching.